Welcome back, and it's time for Focus Africa. Now, in recent years, Ghana's economy has been hit by the exit of several multinational companies, including companies like Société Générale, Glovo, Nivea, Jumia Foods, Lipton Tea, Dak & Lovely, 365Bet Games, and also BIC. Now, this trend raises concerns about the country's economic stability and also highlights the need for diversification. The exit of MNCs can have significant impacts on the economy, including job losses, increased economic activities, decreased economic activities, reduced competition and also innovation, decreased availability of products and services, increase in prices for consumers, and also struggles for local businesses to fill the gap.
Now, even more is the fact that the exit of these multinational companies can also lead to decrease in foreign investment, which can further exacerbate the economic challenges facing the country. The government and regulatory bodies are burdened with taking immediate action to mitigate the impacts of the exit of these multinational companies. Now, the questions are, what policies can be put in place to help mitigate these exits and help support local businesses, encourage foreign investment, and promote economic diversion? Or rather, diversification.
Yes,
what
indeed.
a word.
Joining us to have this discussion on the further implications for Ghana, who are experiencing this, is Professor Lord Mensah, Executive Director, Center for Investment and Sustainable Finance. Professor Mensah, you are welcome. Good to have you here this morning.
Yeah, good morning, and good morning to our viewers, if you can hear me.
Great. Thank you very much, Professor. Now, I want to start by asking what factors you think are driving the exit or responsible for the multinationals leaving Ghana currently.
Yeah, so you may have to look at it from different perspectives. I mean, some of these multinationals, their parent companies may have, strategic decision to leave Africa. And therefore, Ghana being part of Africa, definitely, they will leave. But then also, if they are prioritizing, their exit, looking at country by country, then we may have to look at the specific country traits when it comes to, the economy in general, i.e. the business environment. Now, Ghana has been struggling over the past, few years with inflation. And inflation being high, obviously we know the economic consequence, the pass-through effect, and then also the exchange rates that, the trajectory has been going up every now and then. We know very well that if prices goes up, it tends to reduce, consumption. And every business that is looking at, sales will definitely, advise himself because if prices are going up and, household income is still, the same, you don't expect that household will consume as expected and therefore will affect, sales. And again, most of the companies that you see, the multinationals, the services and then the goods they sell are more or less, luxury, goods.
Yeah.
And being luxury, if you look at it carefully, you're going to look at, household income in excess of affording, luxury product. And so if it turns out that prices are going up and then, income levels are the same, then households may have to strategize. Possibly if you are a food delivery agents company, then people will start cooking in their houses. So, with the little that they have. So, you may not have the market as expected. And then also, if you look at the taxes that has been introduced over the past years, apart from, the taxes going up, you also have inconsistencies in taxes. One time government to introduce one tax, the other time he will be removing it and then bringing another tax. So it makes, after tax profit, very, very uncertain. And every business wants a certain environment. So if it turns up like that, you tend to, scare businesses. And then, exchange rate expectations, which is one of the macroeconomic indicators, as I mentioned earlier. Because if you're a business and you're operating in Ghana, whatever the case may be, you have to, generate your revenue in Ghana cedis. Then you ask yourself at a point where you have generated your revenue, what is going to be the exchange rates, level. So if you're going to have more cities purchasing, the dollar, you don't expect a multinational company who has borrowed in a dollar environment to come and invest in a city environment to be able to absorb some of these unexpected changes in, exchange rate. So the environment has been quite uncertain for these, foreign, investors. And as a result of that, we see them, gradually packing. And depending on the type of, goods and services they are rendering to the economy. Most of them, like I said, are luxury. And so at the point where prices are going up, you cannot continue to afford luxury services.
Professor Mensah, let's look at the government policies and regulations, right? We've seen how President Nana Akufo-Addo has done he's been introducing a lot of policies, and we've seen a bit of shake-up with the Apex Bank of Ghana there. But what role do you think, government policies and regulations have played as well in the exit of these multinational companies?
Yeah, government is doing its best. I mean, if you look at it carefully, the monetary policy aspect of it, which is being, handled by the central bank, keep on chasing inflation. And then, inflation tends to be coming down one way or the other. But you see, inflation build-up is a continuous thing. I mean, if you have last year, for instance, we had our inflation going around, 54%. So if we put in, some numbers, and you have 100 cities at a time, with inflation of 54, we're talking about, 154. Price has increased by 154. Now, if you reduce inflation to 33, we're talking about 33% of the 154. That is about 51, right? If you add it to the 54, then 154, then obviously you're heading towards around 200 thereabout. That means the 100 cities you had, item that you had, the price has increased to 200 cities. That's about 100% increase. And so effectively, the policies are being rolled out by the government, but then as to whether the policies are being effective or not, that's a question we keep on asking ourselves. But then we have our central bank, that has been operating more or less like a standalone policy control. And then at the end of the day, if you run, policies in that manner, you may not see its effectiveness because it has to go with the fiscal side. Because at the point where you have the central bank trying to tame down inflation, you will see the fiscal side, the finance minister reading budget and introducing taxes here and there. And we all know very well that the pass-through effect of taxes is increasing prices. So you will see that, one policy is trying to, fuel up inflation, while the other is trying to arrest inflation. So it becomes more or less a zero-sum game. So its impact on the economy becomes nothing. So that is the problem we are facing. But the government is doing its best. Looking at the textbooks that, the textbooks knowledge that we have, they have been using the same operations, but we're not getting its impact.
Okay, so Dr. Mensah, Professor Mensah, exits are not exactly attractive to people who perhaps are looking at the country and saying, oh, maybe we should invest in Ghana. It's not attractive at all to see all these multinationals leaving. So in what ways can Ghana itself encourage foreign investments to offset all of these multinationals that are exiting and promote the economy, and also for diversification as well?
Well, encouragement is not by words. You have to put the numbers in play. Make sure that your economy, becomes business friendly. And every economy that is business friendly, you have, expectations on uncertainties in exchange rate being minimal. And then also, if you look at, the kind of environment we have, allow, prices to be stable, make sure that your interest rate, that is cost of funds, comes down, because some of these businesses that are exiting, if they have Ghanaians that are participating in such businesses, obviously you need funds available for businesses locally to be able to tie up with, these foreign, businesses. But then if your cost of funds stays up so high, then, I mean, it turns up that, businesses will not have funds available to, to run as expected. So it is kind of multifaceted problem, which we may have to, address. It's not just by words of encouragement, because if you have a government that all policies that has been rolling out, the policies seem to keep interest rates high, then obviously you scare off, businesses. And I think going forward, we expect government to be less aggressive in terms of its borrowing. As we speak now, government financing has been limited to treasury bills. And so treasury bills has been the market that has been, the funds that government has been using to finance its activities. And government keeps on refinancing mature treasury bills with, new issues of treasury bills. And the exposure to what we call refinancing risk is very, very high. And that is not bringing interest rate down. So for the government to send a signal to investors out there that the economy is, doing well, we want the government to read a budget. And then in the budget, there should be a signal that, government's borrowing from the market is going to reduce, completely. And as a result of that, will bring interest rate down. And when it brings interest rate down, the numbers that are, running with interest rate inflation and other things will also start, coming down. And by so doing, you will be able to attract the businesses. So it's not about, encouraging the businesses to come or giving them your words that they should come into your country. It's about making sure that your economy functions very well. I mean, the businesses are looking out for that information, and that would trigger their entry into your country.
Professor Mensah, diversification is important of the economy as well. All the multinationals that have exited, when you look at them, they're almost from different sectors. If there's one thing when it comes to the sectors of the economy that Ghana is improving on by all metrics is definitely tourism. But what other sectors can the government improve on to attract foreign direct investment?
I think for me, where I sit, I think that with the situation we find ourselves in now, it shouldn't be just attracting foreign investors. I think we need to solve the domestic problem. The dire need of this country, the problem that we have is food cost. Because if you look at the inflation drivers over the years, it has been food. So if government wants to attract foreign investors, I think we may have to push them into agriculture. Other countries, neighboring countries, that are talking about Cote d'Ivoire and all those countries, are able to control their inflation because of, supply of food. Because if you have a country that, your inflation is being driven by the essentials that the people use every day, you're always being in trouble. So I think, the key policy that government needs to roll out is to target certain household, consumptions, and then make sure that, you get foreign investors who comes in there, that direct them to areas that, can produce food for us.
So we also have such a problem here in Nigeria, Professor. Being in the know, what would you suggest for Nigeria to do? Whether it's policy, whether it's focus on certain sectors, what should Nigeria do so that we don't continue to have this the same exit of these multinationals?
Yeah, I think, African countries over the years, that have been doing a lot of research in this among African countries. Since the inception of the Eurobond market, I think we've been over-relying on, foreign capital flows so much. And it has made, our policymakers one way or the other, lazy, for which at the end of the day, they don't want to sacrifice, the difficulty in rolling out policies, homegrown policies, that will ensure that at least, the economy is able to produce 50% of its own, economic activities rather than relying on foreign capital flows. If you look at the Eurobond, since we started visiting the Eurobond market, African countries, I can tell you straightforward that they've been using Eurobond proceeds to manage exchange rate, which is quite dangerous. And that is what has brought a lot of the countries into trouble. I mean, in terms of, their debt levels and all those. So from where I sit, I think it's about time that we ring-fence the existing debt, and then going forward, all the possible debt that we're going to accrue they may go into targeted, areas of what, the economy. That will make sure that, production is increased. We having a problem of depreciation of our currency. It's not a bad thing. We talk about most of the African countries. Nigeria is facing the same problem. Africa, Ghana is the same problem. I can tell you that when your currency is depreciating, that is when you take advantage of it to increase, homegrown, product. Because at the end of the day, foreign inflows becomes expensive. And if foreign, goods become expensive as a result of depreciation of, your currency, you make sure that you produce to get a substitute of all those foreign inflows that you could have, imported. So for instance, if it's rice that you are importing, at a point where your currency has depreciated, if you have arable lands that can grow, rice, make sure that you pump in money into those areas. Even if it's a central bank, you allow the central bank to print money to pump into, those, areas, possibly producing rice, to fill in the likely, import that you're supposed to do. It will turn up to create jobs. It will turn up to
Professor,
one way or the other, make sure that, houses, get food to eat and all those. By so doing, it will reduce your exchange, rate. So
Professor
it
Mensah,
has serious implications. So we may have to look at it critically and then target certain areas for the various economies in Africa.
We have to, it's a critical look, and all stakeholders must be on deck. Professor Mensah, many thanks again for coming on. We appreciate you for doing this with us.
You're welcome.